The committee will come to order. A quorum is present. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess at any time. Since we are working in a virtual format today, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items before I proceed. First, if you are experiencing connectivity issues, please make sure you or your staff contact our designated technical support so it can be resolved immediately. Members participating remotely must continue to use the video function for the duration of their participation in the hearing unless they experience connectivity issues or other technical problems that render the member unable to fully participate on camera. It is committee policy that members will remain muted when not recognized, just like turning your microphone on and off during a hearing in person. This is out of courtesy to all members on this committee and so that background noise does not interfere with any other member who is recognized to speak. When you are recognized, you will need to unmute your microphone and pause for a couple of seconds before speaking so that you will be able to hear everything that you say. If you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand during the Zoom raise hand function, unmute your microphone, and ask to be recognized. In order to ensure everything members say is captured on the live stream for this hearing, I ask that members pause for 2 to 3 seconds before beginning to speak. If you wish to have a document inserted into the record, please ask for unanimous consent and have your staff email the document to veteransaffairs.hearings@mail.house.gov. It will be uploaded to the committee document repository. Please keep in mind that you will need to refresh the repository page as it does not automatically update. Without objection, members will be recognized in order of seniority for questioning witnesses. This makes it easier for me to make sure all members participating have an opportunity to be recognized. Does any member have a question about the conduct of this hearing with members participating remotely? Well, good morning and welcome everyone to the Subcommittee on Disability Assistance and Memorial Affairs first virtual hearing of the 117th Congress. Today we resume our oversight of the Disability Medical Examination Program at the Department of Veterans Affairs. This hearing serves as a follow-up discussion on VA's management of the Compensation and Pensions Exam Program and gives us a chance to hear from VA on their plans to address impacts to the exam process as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The CMP exam is a critical step in the disability claims process. CMP exam findings are in many instances a deciding factor in whether VA will grant disability benefits. So access to these examinations and ensuring they are conducted accurately is of the utmost importance to this committee. At the beginning of April 2020, as concerns about COVID-19 infections increased, VA acted quickly to suspend CMP in-person examinations. On May 28, 2020, VA began resuming in-person CMP exams in locations where it was safe to do so and has since expanded availability across the country. I want to first commend VA for the actions taken to protect veterans and exam providers while the agency worked to ensure safeguards were in place to safely resume in-person exams. The committee also encouraged that during the suspension, VA look for other ways to support claims processing through increasing the use of telehealth examinations and using Veterans Health Administration support to complete exams without an in-person component using acceptable clinical evidence. As of December 2020, the exam inventory was sitting at about 350,000, which is drastically lower than the over 1 million exam inventory level VA estimated could have occurred had VA not taken swift action to resume in-person exam. While VA staved off a major increase in inventory, we are still well above the pre-pandemic levels. While VA's efforts are to be applauded, it is important that we confirm VA has a plan in place to ensure our nation's veterans will receive timely decision on their benefit claims. VA is experiencing a steep rise in the backlog of disability claims, which accounts for claims pending greater than 125 days. Veterans are waiting longer and longer for earned disability benefits that could assist them with overcoming the current financial crisis. VA's public data shows the claims backlog has risen from 77,000 at the beginning of the pandemic to approximately 212,000 as of February 2021, an almost threefold increase. VA informed the committee that CMP exam delays account for more than 75% of the pending claims backlog. I can attest to this as I continue to hear from my constituents on claims delays and an inability to get scheduled for a CMP exam. I spoke with one such constituent, Mr. Cheslak, a Navy Marine Corps veteran, who is suffering from cardiac sarcoidosis and does not think that he will be around for much longer. Like many veterans, he just wants to ensure that everything is in place for his wife before he passes. He filed for an increase in his disability evaluation and was scheduled for a VA CMP exam. However, he was told his claim decision would take 8 to 10 months. My team was able to step in and work with the VA to get faster resolution for Mr. Cheslak, but many more veterans are still wondering when and how their claims move forward. These are real people behind the numbers, and it should not take congressional involvement for them to each get an answer. The committee was also made aware that the contract vendors are handling almost 90% of exam scheduling requests at this time. That is up from only 44% in 2017. In a meeting with VA representatives, it was stated that the goal is to get the inventory of pending exam requests down from the 350,000 we are seeing now to a working level of 140,000 by the end of July. And then a conversation that follow-up that we had before the hearing yesterday, I understand that that might actually be more realistic by the end of this fiscal year. So we'll definitely look forward to hearing from our witnesses about that, and we hope that these goals are attainable. While vendors are ramping up on production, a question still remains on whether VA is using all available resources to combat the rise in inventory. VA is not currently leveraging any capacity within the VHA to assist with in-person exams. While inventory control is the most pressing concern, we must also assess what is being done to ensure the quality of the exams remains high as vendors bring on more and more providers, whether these individuals are trained and well-versed in VA disability claims, specifically for those complex claims such as traumatic brain injury and military sexual trauma. The same constituent, Mr. Cheslak, and who went to his exam, the medical provider didn't even know what his condition was. She had to look up cardiac sarcoidosis on the internet. How can we expect that veterans like Mr. Cheslak to trust DA decisions are fair and accurate when they are sent to what are seemingly unqualified examiners? In prior oversight hearings conducted by the subcommittee, gaps in VA's tracking and oversight of contract vendor performance were called into question. Whether VA has taken appropriate action to address these concerns remains unclear, as recommendations from the Government Accountability Office and VA's Office of Inspector General remain open. While we acknowledge the VA has acknowledge the work the VA has done to address safety concerns in the Zoom exams, we know that the VA has a plan to address the growing inventory of exam requests and provide resolution to the hundreds of thousands of veterans waiting for a decision on their claim. We must have a plan that keeps veterans safe, but also keeps claims moving forward. We are holding today's hearing to inform all members of this committee and the American people about how VA plans to address the growing CMP inventory and the role of VHA personnel in assisting, whether controls are in place to ensure vendors are providing quality and timely service to veterans, and how the VA plans to use lessons learned from the pandemic to address future spikes in inventory. Surges in claims filing are expected to continue as VA implements the 3 new Age and Arm presumptive disabilities, addresses a NEMR court order requiring re-adjudication of Blue Water Navy claims, and other future changes in law that the VA must be prepared for. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today and appreciate your candor and feedback as we look for ways to meet the needs of veterans. With that, I would like to recognize Ranking Member Nels for 6 minutes. I apologize, I went over a little bit, give you the same time for his opening comments.
Well, good morning to you. Thank you, Chair Luria. First, I would like to welcome the DAMA subcommittee members of the 117th Congress. I look forward to working with you, Chair Luria, and members on both sides of the aisle over the next 2 years on these important issues impacting veterans and their families. I would also like to thank Ranking Member Boss for the opportunity to lead the subcommittee as the ranking member. This subcommittee focuses on the needs of veterans who have become ill or injured due to their military service. We also work together to ensure that veterans who have passed are laid to rest with dignity while memorializing their contributions to our nation for future generations. I know firsthand the sacrifices the men and women who served our country in uniform have made to protect our freedoms and the lasting impacts their services had on them and their families. Before becoming to Congress, I served 21 years in the U.S. Army Reserve. I also spent nearly 30 years in Texas' 22nd Congressional District, where I completed 2 terms as the Fort Bend County Sheriff. I am honored to bring those experiences to the work we do here on this subcommittee. The House Committee on Veterans Affairs has a tradition of working in a bipartisan manner to ensure that the Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA, is providing top-of-the-line benefits and services to our veterans. And I intend to continue this tradition. When it comes to our nation's heroes, we must leave our political affiliations at the door and put the needs of our veterans first. And I think the chair agrees with me on this. It is what our veterans expect from us, and they deserve no less. Turning to today's hearing, thank you all for being here. I am looking forward to discussing how the department plans to address the climbing inventory of disability exams. At the start of the pandemic, VA suspended in-person disability exams to protect veterans and employees from COVID-19. Although this was the right decision, it caused the claims backlog to increase. I appreciate VA's efforts to decrease the exam inventory by resuming in-person exams when it is safe to do so, as well as expanding the use of telehealth and acceptable clinical evidence or these ACE exams. Despite the VA's progress, as of March 9th, 2021, VA had over 350,000 exam requests pending. According to VA, the goal is to reduce the exam inventory to the pre-pandemic workload of around 140,000 exams by the end of fiscal year 2021. To achieve this, VA reported that contract examiners must complete about 40,000 exams per week. However, contractors are only averaging about 32,000 exams per week currently. I am worried, truly worried, that if VA continues to operate under the status quo, the VA will not reach its goal of addressing the exam inventory by the end of the fiscal year. And I am not alone in my concerns. VA Office of Inspector General issued a report last November, which recommended the VA develop a strategy to decrease the exam inventory. Additionally, the GAO released a report today, which found that VA has not conducted sound planning practices when deciding how to allocate exams between the VHA and the VBA contract vendors. A comprehensive plan for disability exams would provide clear targets that would allow VA and Congress to determine whether the disability exam program is meeting the needs of veterans. I'm looking forward to hearing how the VA intends to address both the OIG and the GAO's recommendations. I'm also interested in discussing ways the VA can improve the quality of contract exams. GAO also found that exams for Gulf War illness, traumatic brain injury, military sexual trauma claims were about twice as likely to be returned for correction, which is unacceptable, twice as likely to be returned for correction than other exam types. Moreover, the VFW raised questions in its testimony about the suitability of certain locations for contract exams and the effectiveness of the communication to schedule exams. I hope we can get to the bottom of these issues and identify solutions that ensure veterans receive the timely, accurate, and professional services. Before I yield back, I would like to note that I am disappointed that we are discussing today's topic through a virtual hearing without an in-person option available. I plan to certainly work with Chair Lyria and Chairman Takano to determine how our next hearing can be safely held as a hybrid hearing. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Nels. We have two panels for today's hearing. With us today for panel one, we have three witnesses here to speak about the CMP process at the VA. From the Department of Veterans Affairs, we have Mr. David McClinican, Executive Director of the Medical Disability Examination Office and Veterans Benefits Administration, and Toby Matthew, Chief Officer, Office of the Disability and Medical Assessment, Veterans Health Administration. From VA's Office of the Inspector General, we have Brent Arante, Deputy Assistant Inspector General, Office of Audits and Evaluations. And finally, from the Government Accountability Office, we have Elizabeth Curta, Director of Education, Workforce, and Income Security Issues. I will remind our witnesses to please pause for 2 to 3 seconds before speaking so that the recording will capture all of your words. And please remember to do so when answering other members' questions. Thank you. Your written statements in full will be included in the hearing record without objection. So with that, I'll now recognize Mr. McClinican for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Loria, Ranking Member Nels, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the Veterans Benefits Administration's Contract Medical Disability Examination Program. Accompanying me today, as you have said, is Mr. Toby Matthew, the Chief Officer in the Veterans Health Administration's Office of Disability and Medical Assessment. VBA orders examinations in its disability compensation and pension programs when there is insufficient medical evidence to decide the claim. Prior to 1996, VBA ordered examinations exclusively through VHA. However, VBA's contract program is now the primary source for these examinations. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, VBA's contractors completed about 75% of all examinations, with the remainder completed by VHA. Congress first authorized VA to contract for examinations in 1996 and expanded this authority in 2003 and 2014, with the 2014 legislation authorizing a nationwide program of contract examinations beginning in fiscal year 2017. VA implemented the law through contracts that currently cover all areas of the continental United States and 37 US territories and foreign countries. The contract examination model authorized by Congress has allowed VBA to complete more examinations with greater flexibility and efficiency. And as a result, VBA has been able to provide more benefit decisions to veterans. In April of 2020, VA suspended all in-person examinations to protect veterans and examination providers from the COVID-19 virus. Nonetheless, VBA and VHA took steps to minimize the impact on claims processing by completing as many virtual examinations as possible using telehealth technology and VA's acceptable clinical evidence process. VBA also revised its claims processing procedures to allow veterans the opportunity to wait for an in-person examination, and they are assured that no final action, including a denial, will be taken on their claim until an in-person examination can be completed. After a 2-month suspension of in-person examinations, which caused over 200,000 extra examinations to accumulate, VBA incrementally resumed in-person examinations where it was safe to do so and stopped the growth of the exam inventory by the end of the fiscal year. Currently, there are 212,000 excess examination requests. Depending upon the continuing impact of the pandemic on examination operations, we hope to return to a normal working inventory, as you have said, about 140,000 examinations by the end of this fiscal year. Our plan for reaching this goal is to increase our capacity to complete examinations through expanded contractor networks and by collaborating with VHA to target certain high volume in-person examinations needed for audiology, musculoskeletal, and mental health conditions. VBA's contractors have already increased their capacity by more than 20% over pre-pandemic levels, and they are committed to further increases until VA achieves its goal. Meanwhile, VHA is assessing where it might have additional capacity to assist with in-person examinations. We appreciate the patience and understanding of veterans waiting for decisions on their benefit claims as we resolve the delay caused by the global health emergency. VBA is committed to a high standard of quality for the contract examination program. Contract examiners must hold an active state license to practice their healthcare profession and undergo the same examination-specific training and certification program that VHA examiners complete. VBA currently monitors the qualifications of more than 12,000 contract examiners and is launching a learning management system that they will use to complete their training requirements and obtain the required certification. VBA also conducts approximately 1,100 oversight audits on examinations completed by contract examiners each month. And the contractors receive feedback through monthly error citation reports and monthly quality calls. Additionally, VBA conducts special focus reviews on specific examination types and error trends to provide additional oversight and feedback to the contractor. While continuing to protect veterans and contract examiners during the pandemic remains our highest priority, I assure you that we are focused on enhanced oversight of the contract examination program. This includes planning for operations during future national emergencies and continuing our work to implement Government Accountability Office and VA Inspector General recommendations. Chairwoman Luria, this concludes my statement. Mr. Matthew and I are happy to address any questions that the committee may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. McClinican. And I will now recognize Mr. Arante for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Luria, Ranking Member Nels, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the OIG's oversight of veterans' disability exams during the pandemic. Before I begin, I want to make clear that the OIG recognizes the dedication of VBA staff and their important efforts to continue processing disability benefits claims even during the pause of in-person exams to curtail COVID-19 exposure. We are also very grateful to Congress for the resources that were swiftly provided to the OIG to ensure appropriate oversight that could continually help VA improve its response to the pandemic. It is an understatement to say this pandemic caught the entire nation off guard. And as with most federal entities, VBA was no exception. During our review, we found that VBA took decisive action to protect veterans' health by discontinuing disability exams. Further, VBA quickly notified veterans of the change in the exam process. However, our recent report also found VBA lacked a long-term, effective strategy to continue scheduling and completing exams at the rate required to maintain a manageable inventory. While VBA has used the methods of telehealth exams and acceptable clinical evidence, also known as ACE exams, in the past, VBA has realized both have limitations. This is because many disability exams require in-person contact with the patient or the use of specialized medical equipment. We recommended the Undersecretary for Benefits develop and implement strategies to reduce the exam inventory. Also, to develop and implement a plan to increase the use of telehealth exams and follow telehealth guidance to determine whether a telepresenter or specific medical equipment is required. As previously mentioned, the number of pending disability exams have increased from 128,000 in March of 2020 to approximately 357,000 as of March 2021. The increase in exams also directly reflects the increase in the disability claims inventory. It is our position that VBA should create a written plan that delineates their strategy for reducing the inventory and expands the use of secondary methods such as telehealth and ACE to complete exams. A written plan is critical because it provides continuity of operations and establishes policy and guidance, ensuring that critical functions continue in cases of emergencies. A lesson learned for a written plan already exists. When VBA stopped in-person exams, their leadership did not provide clear and timely guidance to the regional office staff regarding how to handle a claim in which a veteran failed to report for a scheduled exam. Our work shows for approximately 2 months, VBA employees were prematurely denying claims in situations where veterans failed to report for that examination. It was not until May of 2020 that VBA provided the staff with clear guidance to not deny claims on this basis. Once the guidance was issued, we identified a sharp decrease in claims being improperly denied. If VBA had some policies in place that described procedures to ensure continuity of operations, these denials might not have occurred. While VBA has made some progress, they must further develop comprehensive documented strategies to not only reduce the current inventory of exam requests, but also have long-term plans in place to help mitigate such issues in the future. Chair Luria, Ranking Member Nels, and members of the subcommittee, this concludes my statement, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Arante. I would now like to recognize Ms. Curda for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chair Luria, Ranking Member Nels, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting me to discuss our work on VBA's use of contracted medical examiners, including the impact of COVID-19. The Department of Veterans Affairs often uses medical exams to determine if disability benefits are warranted. This work has increasingly shifted from VA medical centers to contractors who performed about 1.1 million out of the 1.4 million exams completed last year. Today, I will discuss VBA's progress in implementing our prior recommendations on contracted medical examiner oversight and training and the impact of COVID-19 on VA disability workloads. I will also discuss our new findings from work requested by Chair Takano on VBA's planning for the shift of its medical exam workloads to contractors and whether VBA checks the quality of contractor work on more complex exams. In 2018, we identified issues with VBA's oversight of contract examiners that have yet to be fully resolved. VBA has made some improvements to the information it collects on contractor quality and timeliness, but is still unable to use information from the exam management system to ensure both accurate timeliness data and proper exam invoicing on an ongoing basis. Further, VBA has not analyzed its data to identify program-wide patterns and trends in contractor performance as we recommended. Also, VBA has yet to implement a system to verify that all contractors have taken required training and to collect feedback on training quality. VBA has indicated it plans to fully implement our 2018 recommendations this year. The COVID-19 pandemic has introduced significant challenges to VBA's ability to obtain timely medical exams needed to process many veterans' claims. In January, we reported that VBA's temporary suspension of in-person disability exams last year contributed to an increase in pending exam workloads that VBA continues to address. Specifically, average days pending for contract exams nearly quadrupled from about 23 days in January of 2020 to 90 exams inventory has more than tripled to about 350,000. In our most recent work, we found that VA has not fully applied sound planning practices in transferring most disability exams from VHA medical centers to contractors. Specifically, VBA has not fully, 1, identified goals and established a strategy, 2, developed activities and timelines, 3, coordinated and communicated with stakeholders, and 4, conducted a risk assessment. In terms of goals and strategy, VBA has stated that it has been VA's policy to transfer most exams to contractors while maintaining some VHA capacity. However, VBA has no documented plan with activities and timelines to achieve this balance. It has been unclear to us whether the shift in exams has been in response to a VA-wide strategy or the decisions of individual medical centers that have been seeking to reduce their exam workloads. At least 2 medical centers we interviewed had transferred all of their workloads. Regarding coordination, VBA meets frequently with VHA officials and contractors to discuss short-term exam workload needs, but has not consistently communicated its long-term plans with exam providers and stakeholders. Finally, VBA has not conducted a risk assessment. As I previously noted, VBA has yet to fully implement recommendations related to the oversight of contract examiners. Further, more than half of medical centers have sought approval to transfer some of their exam workloads to contractors, and the pandemic has placed new demands on all examiners. A risk assessment would help VBA proactively identify and manage risks and lessen their impact. Having a documented VA-wide strategy with clearly identified actions and timeframes could inform all exam providers of VA's common expectations for exam services, reduce uncertainty, and unify VA toward a common goal. We are recommending that VBA use sound practices to develop a plan for the future distribution of exam workloads. Finally, regarding the question of exams for complex claims, we found that reports prepared by contract examiners for Gulf War illness, traumatic brain injury, and military sexual trauma are returned to the contractor due to errors at about twice the rate of exam reports overall. Correcting errors in exam reports can result in longer wait times for veterans. We are recommending that VBA conduct targeted reviews of these types of exam reports to identify areas where contractors may need more training. In summary, in these challenging and uncertain times, our recommendations can help VBA improve contractor oversight and develop robust plans for how it will allocate future exam workloads. This concludes my prepared statement, and I will be happy to address your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kurta. We will now move on to questions, and as a reminder to my colleagues, to pause 2 to 3 seconds before speaking so that all of your questions are captured. I will begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. And I'd like to start with a question to Mr. McClinican, follow on to the testimony that Ms. Curta just gave. This committee and the veterans who we are here to support, needs to know that the VA has a plan to manage this inventory. And you've spoken and alluded to increased capacity, and even in our prior conversation, a record number of exams being conducted last week and more recently. But do you have a definitive written plan, as has been recommended by OIG and GAO, that has been drafted that lays out how you're going to accomplish this, both within the VA and to set the expectations of the contract examiners who are a critical part of this process?
Thank you. So as far as a written plan on the takedown of the inventory, we have worked very closely with the vendors, each of our 3 vendors. We established a goal for them to achieve what we've been discussing here, which is returning to a normal working inventory by a date certain. And initially this was done in September. I think, as we all know, the pandemic conditions changed after that, in fact, got worse. So this planning that we're discussing is occurring in a very challenging period of time. There's a lot of unknown variables. I would love to do ordinary business planning and forecast out when certain events would happen and when we can achieve the goal. But I think my point is that simply stating that we need a plan for when exactly certain events will happen between now and the goal that we've established is a very difficult thing to do during the pandemic. Nonetheless, each of our vendors know how much capacity they need to add. I think it was Mr. Nels who mentioned 40,000. It's my expectation that they get to 45,000 and beyond. 40,000.
Can I pause there? Because what we're talking about is about 210,000 additional exams above and beyond the normal workload that would have to be worked down on rough timeline between now and the end of the fiscal year, about 7 months or a little bit less. So you're going to need to do 30,000 additional exams per month above and beyond what you do in your normal workload. And I understand that it's a complex environment and it's always changing, but without a baseline plan of how you're going to accomplish an additional 30,000 above the routine amount that you have to do, how are you gauging whether you're going to meet that timeline, and how are we going to communicate the expectation to veterans if we foresee that we're not going to meet that timeline?
Anytime we do a takedown of inventory, and this is unfortunately fairly routine business, whenever our claim inventory increases, we have the same situation. We establish a goal, we know what our receipts are. In this case, we're not taking down simply a fixed inventory of 212,000 exams. We have monthly receipts exceeding 30,000 that we get every single month. So what we need to do is we need to increase our capacity above the receipt level at a high enough volume to drive down the inventory by the goal.
So that's exactly what I was alluding to. I mean, if we have an excess of 210,000, i.e. we're at a 350,000 roughly backlog, you maintain 140,000 in a working pool. So the 210 is the delta that you got to work down to get to the normal level. So I understand there's always new exams being requested and coming in. So it's still, I do still agree with the OIG and GAO's recommendation that there should be a written plan. You can always use the plan as a planning tool to deviate from, but I think a written plan would help all of the stakeholders and the veterans, understand the timeline for reducing this backlog. And the time remaining, I just wanted to also turn to Mr. Matthew and talk about the VHA and what support the VHA can help provide to the contract examiners that are conducting the majority of the exams. Is there any additional capacity there that can help whittle down this excess number of exams that are pending in the queue?
Good morning, Chair Luria. Thank you for the question. VHA is working very hard with our facilities to determine what capacity or what additional capacity that we can support Dave and the VBA with. At this time, many of the VHA staff are reassigned to doing many clinical activities or healthcare delivery activities like vaccination clinics and other types of things. So we're working with them to determine what they can actually get as far as capacity. So we are sharing that information as we get it by site with Dave and his team. And we're optimistic that we can free up some additional capacity to help with this effort.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Matthew, and we would love, an updated forecast on the VHA, part as we move forward and being able to help contribute to cutting this backlog. My time has expired, so I'll now recognize Ranking Member Nels for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for Mr. Arante. Based on the OIG's findings, do you believe VA is on track to reduce the exam inventory to 140,000 exams by the end of FY21?
Sir, I hesitate to say that I'm confident that it's going to happen. And if you will, let me throw some numbers at you that are causing concern for me. So VBA since March 2020 has completed approximately 100,000 telehealth exams and 102,000 ACE exams, but 763,000 in-person exams. So clearly in-person exams is the optimal choice here. But the combined 202,000 of telehealth and ACE does not even meet half of those completed in-person 763,000. My concern is that, yes, they've increased examiners by approximately 4,600 examiners across the nation, but these alternate methods tend not to be as impactful, I think, as VBA has hoped. It does take time for these examiners to get trained. My fear right now, and watching these numbers every month, is that we might be getting into a situation where we're at, or where VBA is right now, they're going to be treading water.
Thank you, Mr. Arante, and it's quite clear that the VA has its work cut out for them in this very difficult time with COVID. My next question then is for Ms. Curta. In your statement, you noted the importance of developing a plan that includes a clear strategy and risk assessment, among other things. Can you discuss some of the additional items the VA should consider for planning its provision of exams moving forward?
Certainly. We think that conducting a thorough risk assessment of VBA's reliance on contract examiners would be a key first step in developing a strategy. This could include, for example, determining how much time would be needed for VHA medical centers to ramp up disability exam production if VBA contractors were to experience performance or capacity issues in the near or long-term future. And our recommendation for VBA to conduct targeted reviews of challenging exams could also help VBA identify potential areas of risk. VBA also needs a documented strategy for how it will identify and obtain additional exam capacity. VBA has not yet determined the extent to which it will be able to rely on existing VBA contractors to meet future capacity needs versus needing to increase capacity by identifying additional contractors or relying to a greater extent on VHA examiners. VBA also has not established activities and timelines to ensure VA entities and disability exam providers are unified in a common goal going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Curta. This one's for you, Mr. Matthew, and I see you're from Pearland. That's right in the congressional district down there in Texas 22, so welcome, neighbor. Mr. Matthew, how many VHA disability examiners were reassigned to other areas of VHA to assist with COVID-19, and what was the response from the VHA?
Good morning, Representative Niels. It's good to see you. I've known you as sheriff, and thank you for all that you've done to our community and had a chance to meet you many times. So thank you for the question. For VHA, we've had a little over 300 reassigned to assist. We're looking for additional capacity to help support Dave and his effort during this time, and we're contacting different networks and facilities to see what additional capacity we can free up to help in this effort.
Thank you, Toby. And then I'll finish with this one. This one for Mr. McClanahan. Do VBA and VHA use the same process and tools to assess the quality of disability medical exams?
Yes, good morning. Yes, we do. I mean, one of the key features of the exam program is a disability benefits questionnaire. So whether the exam is done by a contractor or by a VHA examiner, they use exactly the same tools and methodology to conduct the examination. Toby on his side has a quality assurance program, and we do on our side as well. In addition to that, each of our vendors is required to operate a quality assurance program before they submit a completed disability benefits questionnaire to us to use in our claims processing. So in general, everything is standardized to include the qualifications of the examiners.
Okay, so and so what you're saying is you've done an assessment on whether there are differences in the quality of the exams? You've done that?
I'm not aware of a assessment between VHA completed exams and VBA contractor completed exams. I know there's a thorough quality assurance program on both sides, but a little bit different methodology, I believe, is used. I'd like to defer to Mr. Matthew on what he does on the VHA side.
Thank you, Dave. Year to date, we've done roughly about 2,000 this year. In FY20, we did roughly about 3,400 quality audits. And our standard in VHA, when we measure quality and timeliness, is to look at the VHA CMP examination process. And we have staff in our office that are dedicated to review those exams through chart reviews. And that feedback is given back to medical centers in the network through web reporting tools. The VHA national CMP quality scores have exceeded the 90% benchmark, and we've hit high 90s over the last several years.
Thank you, gentlemen. Chair, I yield back.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Knowles. I now recognize Representative Trone for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mr. McClanahan, I understand about 1/3 the disability questionnaires, DBQs, are conducted by telehealth, while the rest are in person. Could you talk a little bit about the costs of savings with telehealth and time to do the exam itself, one, if there is any, and two, how you save money through reducing the no-show rate? I know in mental health, we've had dramatic changes across the country with COVID as we move to telemental health on a massive reduction of no-shows, which will translate into a cost savings and that people are much more efficient on your staffing side.
Yeah, so I think it was Mr. Arante that mentioned roughly the 1/3 based on the numbers that he provided. That's a combination of tele-CMP or telehealth and ACE examinations. Still, this year we expanded greatly our ability to do telehealth examinations. Working with Toby and his staff, we actually expanded the type of exams that can be done through telehealth by half. And so that helped us a lot during the pandemic. I just want to make sure everybody understands, though, that telehealth is not a silver bullet for our exam inventory. Our schedule for rating disabilities really controls, as a regulatory requirements, really controls how many exams that we can do through those type of virtual modalities. For that reason, most exams have to be done in person. It's a forensic examination of a disability as opposed to a treatment visit such as VHA would do through telehealth. So there is a distinction there. As far as the savings, I wish we could do more. An ordinary in-person exam costs the government about $1,024 on average. There's a discount for both ACE and tele-C&P of about 14% and 11%, 11% for tele-C&P. So definitely cost effective for the government. But to the extent that we can expand use of tele-C&P, that is really going to be a long-term process of seeing if we can adjust some things in our rating schedule that would allow us to actually do more. But there is potential there, and we'll continue to work with VHA to see if we can identify more exams that are appropriate for telehealth.
Yeah, I think that'd be important to expand that universe to use telehealth in particular, but the no-show piece is so important. You know, when you've got doctors, nurses set aside and the patients, the VA members don't show up, you know, that time is lost. They're still paid. Whereas with telehealth, that, you know, hit rate is so much better. So I think you've got to take that into your calculations. That makes sense to you?
Yes, it does. And I wanted to point out also that we have about 55,000 exams of that 210 roughly thousand excess inventory that are on hold because of the no-show problem that you've brought up. So during this environment, we have veterans who are concerned about showing up for an exam. So they either don't show, they cancel their appointment, they tell us that they don't want an appointment. We have 55,000 out of the 210,000 that are on hold for that reason. So you're absolutely correct. If there was a way to do more tele-C&P, which is more difficult than it may sound like in our discussion here, that would certainly help us a lot.
Yeah, I think we have to definitely encourage you to try and look for a broader set of disabilities that you can examine through telehealth for all the aforementioned reasons. And after this COVID pandemic is over, you know, we've seen the wins with telehealth. What do you intend to do to keep virtual DBQs available when the pandemic ends for our veterans who find traveling, you know, literally hours and hours sometimes to the VA, because it's not only saving your doctor's time with everybody showing up, but it's saving our vets time that they don't have to spend hours on the road. How can we continue that?
Yeah, that's a great question. To the extent that we've increased the use of tele-C&P and ACE, that is going to continue in the future. We are not going to reduce it back down to how we were using it. It's going to stay. In fact, right now, every mental health exam can be done through tele-C&P. There is no on-the-scene facilitator that needs to be present. Every single one, that's a general statement, can be done through tele-C&P. So we're going to continue it.
That's great. Thank you very much. Chair, when I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Trone. I would now like to recognize Representative Miller Meeks for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair Luria, Ranking Member Nails, and all the witnesses. And I appreciate all the questions. And Representative Trone, as a physician, I really appreciate your questions as well, too, and know firsthand about the challenges of both telemedicine and then for disability in-person examinations, having done them. Ms. Curta, in your statement, you recommended that VBA look more closely at certain complex claims such as TBI, Gulf War injuries, and sexual harassment, sexual abuse claims. Why do you think it's important to do that?
Sure. First of all, the VBA contracted examiners, until the last year or so, were not allowed to do certain complex claims, just due to probably an experience factor. And so more recently, these kinds of claims have been opened up to the VBA contractors. And so obviously just training, expertise, knowledge are very important. And so, you know, the data that VBA has collected suggests that contracted medical examiners may find completing the exam reports for these types of exams more challenging than for other more routine exams. And we found that VBA claims processors returned exam reports related to these claim types at about twice the rate as they did for exam reports overall. We also heard from VHA medical examiners that these types of claims can be complex to complete the reports, and also claims processors that we spoke to at the VBA said that they can find these kinds of this kind of medical evidence challenging. So just in general, having to return an exam report to examiners for rework slows down the processing of a veteran's claim. And by not paying special attention to exams that are potentially more challenging, VBA may be missing an opportunity to identify potential examiner training needs and ensure that veterans receive high quality exams.
Thank you. And Mr. McClellan, does the VA intend to implement special focused reviews of these type of exams? And also an additional question, given my sex and being a female veteran, do you also require or strongly recommend a female veteran's preference for a female examiner in the assignment of contracts? Is there any opportunity for that? As I think in some instances, as I've worked with my Wapello County Veterans Director, this is an important issue.
Yes, so I'll address that one first. Yes, the current contracts do allow for a request for a particular gender of examiner to be honored. In addition to that, Congress just passed a law that requires us to expand that somewhat based on a sexual abuse, physical assault, or battery. So absolutely, we do that now as far as the contract, and we're exploring how we can modify the contract to adjust for the recent change in law. As far as the focus reviews, I agree with Ms. Curta that it makes us more efficient if we don't have to return exams to the contractor. The contractor cannot charge the government for reworking it, nonetheless it makes us inefficient when we do that. One clarification, and by the way, we do plan to do focus reviews in the areas that she suggested. We already do focus reviews, so this would just be expanding what we already do. One thing to keep in mind is an exam may be returned for clarification as well as error. So it's a little bit of a too broad of a generalization to say that we return those for errors. As Ms. Curtis stated, our claims processors find these type of claims challenging as well. So it may be that a claims processor is returning an exam for clarification. And it may be that it didn't have to be returned, or it was appropriate to return it for clarification. And maybe there wasn't necessarily an error. But regardless, yes, doing a focused review of these specific kind of exams to cut back on the rework, I think would be very helpful. We intend to do it.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, do I have another minute for a quick question?
Certainly, I can yield you another 2 to 3 minutes. I think this is an important topic, and you're pursuing along a good line of questioning. So we'll also offer an opportunity to other members if they'd like additional time after you're done.
Thank you so much. I'm deeply appreciative. I've been an examiner for the American Board of Ophthalmology. And so my question to you, Mr. McClellan, comes, I'm familiar with this topic. So in the VFW, of which I'm a member, raised in its testimony the story of a veteran who felt uncomfortable attending their disability exam because it was located in a hotel and the important details such as the name of the physician were not provided. So can you detail whether the contracts specify where the contract may be held and the provider that'll be providing the contract so that we can assure that our members feel safe attending their disability exams. And I understand sometimes the facility is all that's available, but if you could address that, I would appreciate it. A brief time, please.
Yes, I was surprised to see that myself since we haven't received those type of complaints since about 2012. Contract currently says that the exam has to be held in a contractor facility, in other words, a brick and mortar that the contractor has, the provider's place of business, so it's a local doctor in their clinic, or another place that's authorized by VA. So I'm surprised to see that. Anybody that runs into something like that should contact us and we'll look into it.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you, Representative Miller-Meeks. And I would just like to ask if any other members, you can either raise your hand or turn on your video and physically raise your hand if you would like to ask additional questions. Okay. Well, it appears that we have reached the end of our questions for the first panel. Really appreciate you taking the time to appear before us today and provide updates on this, very critical issue for veterans who are, waiting to have their exams, waiting for their claims to be adjudicated, and it's really important for them to understand all of the tools and resources that are being put into cutting back that backlog. Because, like the constituent I mentioned, some people just don't unfortunately have a lot of time to wait, and the expediency of completing these exams and these claims are really important. So thank you again to Mr. McClinican, Mr. Arante, Mr. Matthew, and Ms. Curta for appearing today. And we will just quickly shift to our next set of panelists. I will go ahead and introduce them, but would ask them to please turn on their video as the other panelists exit from video. And I'd like to thank our veteran advocate groups who are with us today for this second panel. Our witnesses include Samantha Kubek, coordinating attorney from Veterans Initiative Legal Health Division of New York Legal Assistance Group. We also have Mr. Ryan Gallucci, Director of National Veteran Service from the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States, and Shane Lehrman, Deputy National Legislative Director for Disabled American Veterans. I will again remind our new panel of witnesses to please pause for 2 to 3 seconds before speaking so that the recording will capture all of your words, and also please remember to do so when addressing members' questions. Your written statements in full will be included in the hearing record, so without objection. With that, I now recognize Ms. Kubek for 5 minutes.
Chairwoman Loria, Ranking Member Nels, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for having me. I am the coordinating attorney of the Veterans Initiative in the Legal Health Division of the New York Legal Assistance Group, a nonprofit providing free legal services to low-income New Yorkers. NILAG provides legal services to veterans through medical legal partnerships and community-based outreach. In the last 9 years, we have worked on nearly 3,000 VA benefit claims. Many of our clients suffered trauma in the military and now have TBIs, PTSD, or depression. Many are also survivors of sexual assault, pervasive racism, and homophobia. C&P exams are often the most burdensome, traumatizing, and confusing step in an already overwhelming disability benefits process. Exams conducted by independent contractors compound these difficulties in 2 ways. First, inadequate VA oversight of contract examiners creates duty to assist and due process failures. Second, unlike VA examiners, contract examiners cannot provide the cultural competency or continuity of care that veterans need. These issues arise early on. Many veterans ignore contract examiners' scheduling call, believing it to be spam. When veterans don't answer, contractors have disclosed sensitive medical information in voicemails. When an appointment is scheduled, our New York City-based clients have been scheduled for exams in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Fronting the cost of transportation to a site several hours away is a major hurdle, as is the extra time they may need to take off of work to get there. Trying to reschedule often results in long holds and a later appointment in the same location. Fearing adverse claim consequences, veterans feel pressured to accept appointments they cannot realistically attend. My ability to advocate for my clients is seriously compromised by VA's practice of excluding appointed representatives from this process. Given the evidentiary weight these exams carry, we must carefully prepare our clients for them. Yet if our clients do not inform us of the exam, we have no knowledge of its scheduling or occurrence. This hinders our ability to argue that a claim should be decided under VA's Acceptable Clinical Evidence Initiative instead, meaning without an exam when sufficient information already exists to grant and rate the claim. Presuming the veteran receives the call and can attend their exam, they must go to an unfamiliar location and meet with a doctor who is a complete stranger, who will ask detailed questions about traumatic experiences they had in the service. Far too many independent contractors lack the fundamental cultural competency and subject matter expertise to conduct these exams correctly. My client Gabriella was raped while in the Marines and became pregnant. She sought medical care after the assault, but like many survivors, feared admitting she had been raped. Gabriella is now 27 and unable to live alone due to her severe MST-related PTSD and depression. She is currently receiving inpatient mental health treatment services. Gabriella's C&P exam was scheduled with an independent contractor and was, in her words, a nightmare. The examiner found that Gabriella did not meet the criteria for military sexual trauma because she had not been assaulted. To support this wholly inappropriate non-medical fact-finding, the examiner relied entirely on a single doctor's note describing the incident as a consensual sexual encounter, despite that Gabriella was unconscious when the attack began. Both DoD and VA define sexual assault as when the victim does not or cannot consent as when unconscious. Gabriella became so distressed, the examiner gave her the crisis hotline number, but provided no further coordination with Gabriella's providers. Stories like Gabriella's are not uncommon. Even when administered through VA, the CNP process is imperfect. Too often, clients emerge from their VA exams in tears. One had a panic attack in the halls of the VA, where thankfully I was able to bring her to her therapist. Being at the VA, I felt assured that had I not been there, staff would have ensured she got help, not just that day, but in the following weeks too. VA staff are trained to identify veterans in crisis, and notes from exams conducted within VA are part of the veteran's health record and are viewable by their providers. When issues arise during a CNP exam, providers know and can follow up. None of these protections exist for independent contractor exams. Contractor exam notes are not part of the veteran's health record. Leaving the exam, veterans are alone. We share the VA's goal to provide timely decisions to veterans, but the current system is failing them, particularly MST survivors or those experiencing mental health conditions or TBIs. I respectfully propose the following. Independent contractors should not be used for claims related to MST or mental health diagnoses. VA should respect appointed representatives and coordinate exams directly with them rather than with the veteran. VA should prioritize using the acceptable clinical evidence process when sufficient evidence exists to merit an award without an exam. All examiners should be required to review a veteran's statement prior to the exam. Clear processes should allow veterans and their representatives to report problematic examiners or other hurdles, and problematic examiners should be removed. Lastly, VA must establish trauma-informed language and protocols to be used across VA and by independent contractors to ensure they are not creating further trauma. Ms. Chairman, I want to thank you and the subcommittee. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Well, thank you, Ms. Kubek, for your testimony. And I will now recognize Mr. Learman for 5 minutes. Good to see you back.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Chairwoman Luria, Ranking Member Nels, and members of the subcommittee. On behalf of DAV's more than 1 million members who have wartime service-related wounds, injuries, diseases, and illnesses, we thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss VA exams during the COVID-19 pandemic. In order for veterans to receive their earned benefits, a claim must be established with VA seeking service connection for specific conditions. The VA compensation and pension or CMP exam process is vital as it can be determinative of the existence of a current condition or if the veteran's illness or injury is related to their military service or specifically the severity of that condition. VA CMP exams are completed by VA contract examiners and VHA, and which has been noted, the workload has significantly shifted since 2016. In fiscal year 2020, over 77,000 or over 77% of exams were conducted by contractors. VA's ability to conduct exams has been severely impacted by this national emergency. At the beginning of the pandemic, there were roughly 140,000 pending VA exam requests, and as of February of this year, there were over 350,000 pending exam requests. These backlog exams have already impacted the number of pending VA disability claims. In February 2020, VA had 70,000 pending claims. However, today, they have over 215,000 claims pending. Madam Chair, in 2013, VA's backlog reached historic levels of over 600,000 pending claims, and it took VA several years to reduce these numbers. There are other factors that have the potential to increase these numbers to epic levels. For example, VA has received over 82,000 Blue Water Navy Vietnam veterans claims, but still have nearly 35,000 pending that are waiting development and potentially VA exams. Additionally, in January, Congress added 3 new presumptive diseases for Agent Orange, which VA has yet to provide direction except to defer those decisions. The current situation with pending exams and pending claims is a powder keg waiting to be set off, and that is why swift action is needed now. All of our recommendations for a path forward can be found in our written testimony. However, I will highlight some of them. We recommend that VHA increase its workload of C&P exams to their upper capacity. This should include in-person examinations as well. While we understand that VHA is under significant stress in providing COVID healthcare and vaccinations, VBA needs to utilize VHA as an experienced resource to tackle the rising claim requests and address the backlog. VHA is a world leader in specialty healthcare and treatment. Therefore, we recommend that VHA have primary responsibility for all VA C&P exams for initial PTSD claims, MST, TBIs, POWs, amputees, and the catastrophically disabled. We recommend that VBA continue to improve its monitoring and oversight of contract examiners, but also believe that all VHA exams must be included in VBA's oversight as well. Further, we recommend that VBA continue to address the veteran experience and their satisfaction to include VHA exams and conduct surveys or town hall-like events to communicate directly with veterans. Another contributing factor to the backlog of exam requests and claims is VBA's tendency to overdevelop a claim. We recommend that VBA create a tracking mechanism for all decisions that have privately completed DBQs and yet an exam is still requested. This can provide insight to the exam request culture and even reduce the backlog. Madam Chair, the COVID-19 pandemic created over 350,000 pending exam requests and over 215,000 pending claims. If left unchecked, the current backlog, coupled with nearly 35,000 pending Blue Water Navy claims and the incoming claims for the new Agent Orange presumptives, VA's backlog of claims will reach critical mass, similar to that in 2013. Veterans need VA to be prepared with a plan for the future, and action must be taken now. This concludes my testimony, and I am pleased to answer any questions you and the subcommittee may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Learman, and thank you also for noting that COVID-19 is not the only contributing factor to the current backlog that we are seeing. Also, the addition of Blue Water Navy claims, and as you mentioned, the eventual addition of three more conditions, which will be considered under those claims. So I think that the planning we're doing today to increase capacity beyond the normal to make up for COVID, also has other needs that it will address in the future as we anticipate a rise in claims for other reasons. And I will now recognize Mr. Gallucci for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chair Loria, Ranking Member Nels, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to provide VFW's insight on VA compensation and pension, or C&P exams during COVID-19. When COVID-19 started to spread across the U.S., VA made the difficult decision to suspend all C&P exams out of safety concerns for veterans. This was the only choice that VA had, as COVID upended the lives of every American. The moment VA suspended all exams, an unavoidable backlog built. As we learned more about the virus and became more confident in safety, VA restarted exams, but continued to respect the wishes of veterans who did not feel comfortable reporting due to COVID-19. As the vaccine rolls out, the VFW hopes for a return to normal in the near future. But rebuilding from this pandemic will present challenges to everyone involved in the VA claims process, and we must all work to ensure veterans do not slip through the cracks. New VA leadership and contract vendors are communicating with VSOs on the backlog. We respect and empathize with the challenges VA and its vendors have faced over the last year and the difficult decisions that they had to make. However, we must call attention to shortcomings and provide recommendations to best serve our veterans in unprecedented times. We will not find a magic solution to end this backlog tomorrow. It will take time. However, VA, its vendors, and VSOs can take steps to help move more claims through the system and establish clear expectations for veterans who are waiting. First, VA must exercise all of its authorities to process claims without ordering exams or complete exams using VA doctors. Last spring, VA eliminated its private provider disability benefit questionnaires, or DBQs, and last winter, VA moved to shutter its internal C&P clinics. Thankfully, Congress intervened and VA once again has these tools at its disposal. VA should make full use of internal assets to complete exams where it can, especially in the kinds of claims my fellow panelists just outlined. VA should also fully utilize DBQs submitted by veterans to rate claims. COVID changed the manner in which all Americans receive care, with providers converting as many appointments as possible to telehealth. We're grateful to see that VBA lifted its prohibition on using private medical evidence secured via telehealth for rating purposes on March 1. VFW is calling for this, and we're grateful to see that VA is considering this dramatic shift when evaluating private medical evidence. Next, both vendors and VA should evaluate how they're communicating the backlog and claim status to veterans. Clear communication will go a long way in helping veterans understand how VA and its contractors are handling claims. As VA, its vendors, and VSOs have scrambled to assist our veterans in new ways, the message may not be keeping up. Through the VFW's assistance programs, we've heard from veterans who are frustrated by long delays and unclear exam policies. Some veterans believe they completed all their exams months ago, but their claims have not been processed. Some of these claims may be delayed because VA prioritized claims for severely injured service members. Others may still need additional follow-up that cannot be completed due to COVID. Regardless, the message has not reached the veteran. As a proactive step, the VFW included language on our benefits assistance webpage explaining potential delays in the BDD claims process. We have also started to consult our clients on what to expect as VA addresses the backlog. We're similarly eager to work with both VA and its vendors to help in messaging to ensure that veterans understand what's happening with their claims and what they need to do. Next, the complexities of COVID have created considerable confusion for all parties. In the scramble to build new protocols, competing priorities make it difficult to properly handle every claim. However, attention to detail must remain paramount. For example, a client contacted the VFW in February concerned that she was abruptly scheduled for a series of exams in her final weeks of pregnancy. In reviewing the file, both VA and the vendor contributed to the confusion. VA notified the veteran on multiple occasions that her exams would be delayed until after her baby was born and to contact VA at that time to restart the process. However, in December, VA initiated an inquiry with the vendor on exam status. The vendor then replied that her exams were delayed due to COVID. Then in February, the vendor abruptly scheduled the veteran for exams, including an audiology exam with only 1 day's notice more than 2 hours from her home. I spoke to the veteran on the way to her exam, then contacted VA and the vendor to ensure that her exams were rescheduled. The vendor and VA handled the situation appropriately at this point, and we believe this was the result of an overburdened system seeking to overcome the obstacles of COVID. However, both VA and the vendors must ensure that their teams pay close attention to each claim and handle each veteran's claim appropriately. Finally, quality, safety, and confidentiality must always remain paramount in the process. We respect that the vendors are doing everything in their power to address the backlog, to include onboarding providers, standing up clinics at community hubs like VFW posts, and working overtime. However, the vendors must ensure that any of these solutions are presented clearly and professionally to the veterans using them. The C&P backlog is another devastating consequence of COVID-19. As we continue to fight this invisible enemy, we must do all that we can to ensure veterans have timely access to their benefits. We look forward to working with this subcommittee, our VA partners, and VA's contract vendors to make this happen. Madam Chair, this concludes our remarks, and I'm eager to answer any questions this subcommittee may have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Galucci, for your testimony. And I'll remind my colleagues again that before we commence our questions, please pause for 2 to 3 seconds so that all of your remarks are captured. I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes, and I'll start with Ms. Kubek. I appreciate the attention that you paid in your testimony to veterans who are seeking exams and claims related to military sexual trauma. And can you talk a little bit about the comment you made about needing to use trauma-informed language and kind of how some of the practices of the VA are actually causing harm or some ways re-victimizing people who are attempting to file some of these claims, and then recommendations that you might have to make this process better for these veterans. And you mentioned something that other people working in the legal representation field have also mentioned, is that the VA has really been reticent on a lot of occasions to work with a representative, either legal assistance or a VSO who's been designated to help that veteran. Can you share any experiences in that?
Yeah, so with the MST claims, we're really just seeing that the way in which the trauma event is being discussed with the veteran really contains no cultural competency, trauma-informed language. Veterans are being told that their assault did not occur. which should never be happening, particularly by a medical provider who's not supposed to be making those sort of fact-finding decisions about the experience of the veteran in that way. And we're also seeing, therefore, that veterans who become very emotional, very upset in the exam are not receiving the level of support that they need. I have a client who became very emotional during her exam and then later called me expressing suicidal ideations. No note of this was put in her exam notes. From the exam, it seemed as if her demeanor was absolutely fine, despite the fact that she said she was crying throughout most of the exam. It seems as if training is needed if exams are to be conducted by independent contractors, but we would strongly recommend that these types of exams not be conducted by these contractors. With regard to not being informed of the process, we are completely left out of this. If clients do not tell me that they have an exam, I have no way of knowing this. I am not informed that this is going on. I can't prepare the client in advance. I have had great struggles trying to coordinate issues. I had a client who only spoke Spanish, who was completely left to figure out on her own how to ensure that her examiner would either speak Spanish or have access to an interpreter line. So our inability to intervene here and be the representatives our veterans have appointed us to be is seriously hampered.
Well, thank you, Ms. Kubek, for sharing that. And, I wanted to turn back to some testimony from the previous panel where Mr. Arante mentioned that there was a period of time where there was actually denials of claims because exams had been missed, and those exams had been missed because of delays due to COVID. And so I was wondering, for any of the panelists, but we can start with Mr. Learman, do you have direct evidence, experience from veterans who had this happen to them while they were in the claims process? And have you had any communication from the VA that there's, sort of a watertight solution to go back and check, every exam that was scheduled and claim that was denied during that period to make sure we haven't let any slip through the cracks?
Yes, we have had more than one veteran acknowledge that it happened to them through the process, and they reached out to us immediately. And part of the problem too was when it took away our ability for the 48-hour VSO review to review claims and decisions, we weren't always able to catch these ourselves as the veterans representative. So then it's now important that the veterans bring those to our attention. In our recommendations, we do believe that VBA needs to go back and find every single one of those cases that was denied for that reason and make that a priority of one, reopening the claim, and two, rescheduling those examinations in a good manner and make sure they're getting the proper decisions required to evaluate their claim.
Well, thank you, Mr. Learman. And Mr. Gallucci, did you have any similar instances that you dealt with at VFW?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we had. Similar to what Shane reported, the VFW's pre-discharge rating review team would routinely find these in the month of April. So we brought several to the attention of VBA at that time. And similar to Shane's comments, when we lost notification and pre-decisional review, we lost optics on those claims. I believe my colleagues from the VFW testified to this over the summer before this subcommittee, over last summer before this subcommittee as well. But once we have a new notification and review system, I'm cautiously optimistic that we may have better optics on how that's happening.
Well, thank you. And just a quick yes, no, for those veterans who you identified this issue, were you able to seek resolution and get their claims reopened and the exams rescheduled, or has that been an ongoing problem, like they're stuck in a limbo because of it?
Yes, ma'am. The minute we were aware of those, we were able to contact VBA and they were aware of the issue, took immediate action and reopened the claims and then rescheduled their examinations.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Gallucci, did you have similar experience?
Similar experience from our rating review team, yes.
Okay, so I would say to any veteran who might be watching today who's had this happen during this time frame of this year and during COVID and in the exams they were not able to attend in person because of COVID, if they've had a claim denied, they should certainly circle back and maybe work with a VSO such as yourself or directly with the VA to try to have their exams rescheduled and their claims looked at again. So I know I ran over for a few minutes, so I will give the same courtesy to my other committee members. So for the ranking member Nels, I'll go ahead and recognize you for 6 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Lurie, and thank you all for being here. And my first question is going to be for Mr. Gallucci, but I'm also, and I know that Representative Miller Meeks commented she's a member of the VFW. It's my most beloved organization, and we had an opportunity last week to do a Zoom with National Commander Roche. I'll just say what a great American he is, and it's just you continue the good fight. But my question is I'll ask you to please detail the challenge the VFW identified where contract examiners could not verify the contact information of certain veterans. And if that took place, we've got some serious issues.
Absolutely. So this was an issue that was raised to us in a recent conversation with one of the vendors, in that some of their claims, they're really seeking our assistance in identifying veterans who one of two things may have happened. Either they reported to VA at some point since March of 2020 that they were unwilling to report for an exam due to COVID, or there is missing contact information. I will tell you that the missing contact information has been a persistent problem for a number of years. It's something that we run into consistently with claimants. There needs to be some kind of quality control or feedback mechanism from those vendors to VA if there is incomplete contact information, or if that contact information is inaccurate. Veterans move frequently, especially recently separated service members. They move frequently. Phone numbers can change, things like that. It's a challenge that the vendors need to address.
It seems like it's a pretty simple fix. What recommendations, Ryan, would you give to the VA to address this, to make sure it doesn't ever happen again?
I think for what, I was thinking about that coming into this hearing today, when talking about veterans who may have reported to the vendors that they couldn't report due to COVID. If we've lost optics on those veterans, the VFW has done some en masse outreach. If you're a veteran who didn't go to your exam, please contact us. We'll get it scheduled again. But what I would like to see, I believe, moving forward is a by name list, if we can either get that from Department of Veterans Affairs or from the individual vendors, so that we can assist in proactive outreach. That may be the responsibility of VA. If VA can't get a hold of that veteran, then contact their representative if they have a representative. To Ms. Kubek's point, we generally know how to get a hold of our clients.
Thank you, Mr. Gallucci. My next question is for Mr. Lehrman, and I want to thank you and the DAV for your service to our veterans that have given so much. But your testimony recommended that the VA develop a mechanism to track decisions that include a DBQ that was completed by the veteran's private provider, but the VA still required a disability exam. Can you expand a little bit on this suggestion?
Oh, sure can. Thank you very much, Ranking Member. If a veteran is submitting additional medical evidence and a DBQ that fits all of the criteria for the evaluation process, that is sufficient enough for VBA to use to rate the claim. Actually, DBQs were designed with that exact intention in mind. They were designed so veterans could provide that specific information to VBA and have a decision rendered instead of requesting an exam. We think that in many instances, they're requesting examinations when it's not necessary if they have adequate information in the file. If we can track those, we'll have a better understanding why they continue to request VA exams if there's enough evidence from a DBQ. Now, there are going to be instances where the DBQ doesn't have all of the specific required information for that specific disability, and we understand that. Then you would have to get the exam. But I believe VFW and Ms. Kubek would probably agree with me, Ryan would. This is an ongoing problem that we've seen over years within the VA system.
I would add this has happened for our clients as well with when the DBQ was completed by a VA doctor who has been treating the veteran. So it's not just the private physicians. We're seeing this with VA exams as well.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Lehrman another question. Please elaborate on the DAV's testimony, which recommended that the VA issue reports on decisions that were improperly denied without a disability exam.
Thank you again. As noted by the OIG report in November, we believe that VBA should go back and find as many of those cases, for examples that have happened, and that they provide an updated report on specifically those, what actions they have taken. Have they reopened the claim? Have they provided a new exam? Have they provided a new decision? We really believe VBA should follow up with that to ensure every single one of those veterans that were denied because of not reporting for the exam is still getting a quality, timely decision despite that. And we don't want any veteran to miss out on benefits because of the COVID-19 pandemic and failure to meet that examination.
Thank you, Mr. Lehrman, and Chair, I'll yield back. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Nels. I'll now recognize, I'm sorry, I'll now recognize Representative Miller-Meeks for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Luria, Ranking Member Nels, and all of our witnesses today. And Representative Nels, I'm just going to say we're all great Americans. So, and VFW members as well. Ms. Kubik, I'm both a physician and a veteran, and I'm concerned about your suggestion that the VA rely only on acceptable clinical evidence claims. And I'm going to ask you to detail specifically which claims you think should not require a disability exam. So I'm thinking that you're thinking of certain type of claims where I, as a physician, am thinking, having done disability exams, that there are many exams that need to have a physical component, an exam component.
Yes, thank you. So we would only recommend that the ACE process be utilized when sufficient evidence already exists. So these are cases similar to what Mr. Lehrman was saying, where a DBQ has already been completed by the veteran's physician or mental health care provider, where sufficient evidence is already there, particularly for cases involving mental health, cases involving trauma, where the exam is almost by definition going to some degree, likely re-traumatize, likely re-trigger the veteran in those experiences. And so to the extent that we can avoid additional instances of that where the evidence does exist already in the record, we would recommend that that be utilized there. In cases where more evidence is needed, we understand that, of course, the ACE process is not going to be a substitute there.
So this would be in, as you mentioned, specifically mental health claims, military sexual trauma claims, where there is a likelihood of re-trauma or additional trauma just through the exam process. Excellent. Yes. And then I just wanted a clarification to, if I heard this correctly, you had mentioned earlier in answer to a question, a story about working with a veteran, the difficulty of scheduling examinations and not getting notice. But you mentioned that the veteran you were working with did not speak English. And so I'm having difficulty understanding how there's a veteran having served in the military that did not speak English. And did I hear that correctly, or was it just that English was not their primary language?
So from my understanding from reviewing the veteran's file and speaking with them today, the veteran, English was always their second language, and their English has definitely declined, partially due to the severity of their mental health condition. However, this was actually a veteran where inside of their personnel file as well, we found notes saying that at various times their commanders were having difficulty understanding them back in the service. I was about as confused as you probably are by that note, but that is the facts of that one.
So it was a language barrier that was worsened with the trauma that they had experienced and created more difficulty in communicating. Okay, I just wanted a clarification, so thank you for that. And then, and this is for all the panels, but I'll start again with Ms. Kubik. Can you elucidate how the VA and contract vendors can better coordinate with veterans and their accredited representative when scheduling exams? And part of this, as a physician, having to deal with no-shows, and as a public health professional, getting people in for vaccinations, we've developed some techniques. So I just wanted to have your input, and then that of the other members if we have time.
Yes, I think first of all, providing sufficient advance notice of the exam. I believe it was Mr. Galucci who spoke about a veteran who was told of an exam 2 hours away only one day before. That's not sufficient time to plan, and you're more likely to have veterans who are no-shows when doing that. Additionally, providing notice to the representative, because again, as Mr. Galucci said, we tend to know how to reach our clients, and so we can ensure that we are following up, making sure they're aware of when and where, they have a plan for how to get to the exam. We can be of assistance here in these cases if we are aware of what is going on. And finally, I would say it's of the utmost important that these examiners are not leaving any sensitive medical information on voicemails when they are missing the veteran. They can simply say that it is for their VA exam. They don't need to specify the condition that they are calling regards to.
What about text messages? Especially with younger veterans, younger people often respond to text messages more than calls.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Utilize all technology that we have available to us to ensure that we're not wasting anyone's time and that we are having our veterans be present for all exams when possible.
Madam Chair, do we have a little bit more time?
Sure. I can go ahead and yield you 3 more minutes.
Thank you. And Mr. Galucci and Mr. Lehrman, any comments on better accessibility, scheduling, more notice, and other avenues and ways to reach out to veterans?
Thank you, Ms. Miller-Meeks. I've lots of thoughts on it, as a matter of fact. It's a topic that we raised with Veterans Benefits Administration, actually, I want to say in early February, about what does timeliness look like? What does a positive claims experience look like for a veteran? The veteran that Chair Loria spoke of in her opening remarks, timeliness is very different to him than it is to veterans possibly with routine future exams or natural progression of other types of service-connected disabilities. What I floated to VBA and what I would float to the subcommittee is, what are the options to giving veterans more choice in this process, or more a better opportunity to determine how their exams will be conducted. VBA tried this a few years back with the Decision Ready claims process. It was a well-intentioned program, but I believe it put too much responsibility on the VSOs and wasn't clearly communicated to clients. There may be room to give veterans the option to choose either VA will schedule your exams, or you can choose a time period in which you can schedule your exams on your own. Give them more enterprise over the process.
Thank you. Mr. Lehrman, any comments?
Thank you. It has been an ongoing problem within the VA claims process for many, many years, not giving veterans proper notice. Now, one thing they could do, and it was briefly mentioned, is one, VHA has the ability to text veterans about their appointments and everything coming up. So yes, that'd be great if vendors could do the same. And similar to what VHA is doing, sometimes they can help coordinate either a medical appointment within VHA or in the community. Why can't we have that same similar function with C&P exams? So if a veteran has a better opportunity to, in 2 weeks from now, to attend this exam, which would be a contractor, or 3 weeks from now within VHA, that's another option that could be considered and looked at, because when they miss that exam, it really does become a huge problem rescheduling, re-getting done. We were just a veteran that we represent starting in October had to reschedule his exam multiple occasions for multiple conditions through March of this year, and finally got it done. So those are a lot of problems and frustrations veterans deal with in the process.
Thank you for that. And everyone's mentioned technology and telehealth. And I can just say, as a physician, we think of telehealth, which is appropriate for part of the exams, but we're forgetting that technology is rapidly advancing. We can now do pulse oximetry or measure for oxygen levels. We can do EKG. So in the future, what we're able to do with telemedicine and telehealth is going to greatly expand, and we are going to need to adapt and change with that and improvise. So thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you for our witnesses as well. I yield back my time.
Well, thank you, Representative Miller-Meeks. And I'd just also like to afford the opportunity to Ranking Member Nels if he has any additional questions. And if not, we can move into closing remarks.
I'm fine, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to thank all of our witnesses from both panels for joining us today. I think it's clear from this discussion that we need to continue to monitor VA's progress in how they can reduce this backlog in CMP exams and the subsequent impact that that has on the claims process. With veterans' lives at stake, Congress needs to know that the VA has a strategy that is a well-developed plan going forward and make sure that all stakeholders engaged in the process are aware of that plan. Open communication and collaboration will ensure the voices of veterans themselves are taken into account as we navigate this unprecedented crisis. Finally, I want to thank all of our witnesses for participating in our first DAMA hearing of this Congress. I'm grateful for the information you've shared, and I appreciate your partnership because I believe we are all here to help make sure our veterans receive the best possible care and the benefits that they've earned from their service. And with that, Mr. Nels, would you like to offer any closing remarks?
Thank you, Chair Luria, and all of our witnesses for being here this morning. Although I truly believe the VA has taken steps to reduce the number of pending disability claims, the VA must take additional measures if it wants to bring the inventory down to 140,000 by the end of the fiscal year. I can't wait I'm going to be monitoring this progress for the next 7 months, 8 months to see exactly where we're at. I also appreciate the other witnesses for sharing how the VA can reduce the inventory of exams and provide the disability exam process overall for veterans. And thank you all for what you do. I'm looking forward to working with the department and my colleagues on this subcommittee. And with that, Chair, I'll yield back, and God bless you all.
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Nels. I also look forward to working with you through this Congress and this committee, as well as all of our other members. Again, I thank all of the witnesses and members who participated today. And without objection, that concludes today's hearing. All members will have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. The hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.